Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest. He's just published a book. Full title of the book he published in May 2024 is Slaves of Satan, a Catholic Study of Perfect Possession, Diabolical Subjugation, and the Enemies of Jesus Christ. And his name is Patrick R. Bell, last name spelled Bell. And this might be a pretty heavy topic and subject matter, so I would recommend, if you're kind of sensitive to this kind of literally we're going to talk about demonology and things like that. If you're sensitive to that, and also child abuse and sexual abuse topics, this is not the show for you. And I would not have any young kids in the background while we talk about this very kind of dark subject matter, but also important subject matter. But we'll get right to it. So Patrick R. Bell, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, William. Appreciate it.
Excellent. So for people who may not have heard of your book or may not have heard your name, maybe you can talk about your background, what got you interested in this subject matter. I know you did a lot of research, and some of the names are familiar maybe to my audience, Malachi Martin, but maybe you can talk about kind of the research you had to cover to put together Slaves of Satan.
Yeah, sure. No problem. So my background, I was raised Catholic. And then I would, around age 14, I kind of fell away from the faith, and I got into, a really bad group of friends, and got into a lot of trouble with drugs, stuff like that, which actually led to me actually going to prison for drugs. And and that was in 2006. So while I was in prison, I had a very disturbing and scary encounter with another inmate in there who, I now believe that person was possessed, perfectly possessed. And so, I had an encounter with him where his eyes, actually turned black. And it's a kind of extraordinary because there's stories that I write about in my book about other people with, like Ted Bundy. So that's just one example. Andrew Pixley. Those are two guys who, people would say that, their eyes would literally turn black. So I had this encounter, with this inmate, and it just scared the absolute, crap out of me. So much that I went running back to the faith, and I had another experience too when I got out, and so that is what led me back to the Catholic faith, that I was raised in, and that is what led me to start, to study demonology, because I had these experiences. And I wanted to know more about them. I wanted to know what had happened to me. I wanted to know what I saw. And, I wanted to study it. And so I did. And starting in about, I would say 2007, when I was actually still in prison, I started a deep, deep dive on the topic of demonology. And over the years of studying this, I kind of noticed that a lot of Catholic priests who are exorcists, a lot of them are writing their own books nowadays. And so there's just been a plethora of books that have been released lately on the topic of, exorcism, demonic possession, demonic phenomenon, stuff like that. And during my study of demonology, I came across this, topic of perfect possession. And when I first came across it, I always thought that this was like something that needed to be talked about more, something that needed to be studied more. And it was definitely something that I wanted to know more about. And when I tried to find out more about the topic of perfect possession, I came up empty at first. And that's because people just don't talk about. I mean, it's talked about here and there, and in some books, I mean, at the most, William, you'll find like a paragraph about it, a sentence here, a sentence there. People, who write books about possession and stuff like that, they kind of just touch on it and just say, oh yeah, there's this thing, it's perfect possession or diabolical subjugation, and yeah, it's the most serious form of possession, and that's like all they'll write. And so I wanted to, number one, I didn't want to write a book that was just like all the other books that have been released. I wanted, if I was going to write a book, I wanted to write something unique. And I wanted to write a book that would inform people about what's, out there and what's going on. And so that is what prompted me to start this like deep study on the topic of perfect possession, which, I had to read hundreds of books. I had to go, page through giant theology manuals in the seminary. I mean, it took years and years because I wanted to find every single last thing I possibly could about perfect possession. And I think I was largely successful in that. I am a little bit limited with foreign languages, so there probably is some stuff about it in Latin, probably Italian, that I couldn't access because I can't speak those languages. But I think I was largely successful in putting together, putting this whole topic of perfect possession, all of it together into one source material.
Right. I think you did a great job. I mean, it's almost like you're bringing into the present a lot of those older. You mentioned the Malleum Maleficarum or whatever, that witch hunters and urban grandeur,
Yep.
devils of Loudun, right? So
Yep.
It's almost like all that stuff is studied and brings to the present these present personalities. So demonology may be something that was studied by King James or something like that. He wrote a book, Demonology, or some of these old people from the Middle Ages. But we literally have almost like a living demonology possessed people in our present day. Would you agree with that?
100%. Yes, absolutely. So not only, so back in like the 90s and early 2000s, there was maybe just like a handful of exorcists in the US, Catholic priests, like maybe 5, right? Ever since like 2004, that number has been growing and growing and growing to the point where there's now probably 200 roughly Catholic priests who are exorcists. And the reason for that, William, is because there's just been an absolute explosion of people coming to the church seeking help because they are being attacked. Their houses are being infested. They're being, oppressed, obsessed, in some cases possessed. And I can tell you, because I know this, for a certainty, that these Catholic exorcists, they are just absolutely overwhelmed right now. They're overwhelmed, overworked. They're just being run down. And part of the problem is the giant explosion of, occult practices in today's society. Witchcraft has just been completely normalized.
Yeah, no, it's the number one religion among high school girls in LA, supposedly, or competes for it. Yeah, crazy.
Yep. So that stuff has been completely normalized. And what people don't realize is that when you start to dabble into that stuff, you are opening a door into the demonic realm that you will not be able to close yourself. And so not every single person that, dabbles in Wicca or, witchcraft or plays with a Ouija board, not every single person that does that stuff ends up getting, attacked by demons, but some do. For sure. And that's why the exorcists are just overwhelmed. So you have that part of it, right? But then there's a whole nother side of the whole, thing that you were just talking about. And that is the topic that I wrote about. See what I was just talking about in the last couple minutes with all the, exorcists being overwhelmed and the people being attacked. All of that stuff usually has the same phenomenology in that those people who end up seeking help from the church, the reason they are seeking help from the church is because at some point they had opened a door, a demon had come in and started, operating in their life. And at some point along that human person and demon relationship, the person decided, for whatever reason, that, oh crap, I'm in trouble here. I need to get help. For whatever reason. And so the people who had originally opened that door, now basically change their minds and their wills, which is the most important thing. And they say, no, I don't want this. I made a mistake. And so at that point, you have the demonic will fighting against the human will. And that is the thing actually that causes all of the bizarre phenomenon that is normally associated with cases of possession. Right? It's because the human will is in conflict with the demonic will. The person who's possessed is protesting. They're protesting against the demonic operating in their life. They're protesting against the slavery that they are being put under. And that's what causes all of the stuff you would normally associate with a case of possession. Right? So, but the phenomenon of perfect possession is totally, totally different. Those are people who, throughout their relationship with the demonic, no matter how it started, and it can start in various ways. I write about that in my book. It can start in 3 ways: implicitly, explicitly, or by a diabolic invitation. Those people never, for whatever reason, they just never protest against it. They accept it. They want it. Sometimes they get stuff in exchange for it, and they never, ever, ever fight against the demonic in their life. They completely accept the devil. They basically sell their souls, right? I mean, that's, and so there's no, the demonic will and the human will are completely consensual at that point. And so in those cases, there is absolutely no sign of anything wrong, because there's nothing, basically the human will and the demonic will have entered into a harmonious relationship, basically. Yeah. A collaborative relationship is what I call it in the book.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. So those things, like the interesting thing that came to mind, like reading through your book, is this topic of possession, because there was a book called Possession, and that was the basis for The Exorcist, which you mentioned in your book, right? Yep. So we know Reagan, if I forgot her last name, but like these are examples. Yeah, Reagan. But that's based on a true story. And the Jesuit priest who did his exorcism, he was playing around with a Ouija board, was from the Midwest. It was kind of like so I think it was at Creighton University. Like, it was a real story. So these are real. Sorry.
I think it actually was at St. Louis University.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
Yep, no, he was a Jesuit priest. It was Father William Bowdern. He's the priest who ended up doing the bulk of the exorcisms. There was several other Jesuit priests involved with that, though. I mean, Father Van Roo, Father Halloran, Father Bishop. There was many different Jesuit priests that were associated with that case. But yes, you are correct. That
is just one. And there's also been movies. So in addition to the books that are coming out, The Right, I think, there was another one with a famous actor. I can't remember his name. Very recent. So
Russell Crowe. Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, thanks.
There's been tons of them. Yeah. Tons of them. Those aren't the only ones. I mean, there's been just an explosion of them. The Conjuring, The Nun, Annabelle. I mean, it just goes on and on and on with the movies, just and the books. There's just
that's a reflection of our real culture, like you said. Like, it's growing. Like, this is a resurgent phenomenon. Like, this is happening. Yeah, so it's really something else. So these perfectly possessed people are really out there. It's really scary. And but they've been through history. Like, I mean, what comes from Ryan too, what's also people wouldn't know, but there was urban grandeur. There was also Gilles de Rais. I don't know if you heard his story. In France, he literally made a blood pact. Yeah, and was into child sacrifice.
Yep.
And he had 2 trials. He was 15th, 16th century, something like that. But one was a legal trial, but the other one was theological. So they looked at him through the lens of his rebellion against
the church,
right, and the Satanism that he was involved. Unspeakable depravity. 500 kids murdered. So Probably perfectly possessed. Comes.
Oh, I'm very likely, yes. When people are involved in that type of evil and depravity, it's almost certainly that those people are perfectly possessed. Yes.
Yeah, so it comes up into a kind of surfaces into our modern era, but also you have like this stories about the international occult elite and serial killers, but a
Yep.
much more spiritual take and elements that people may overlook when analyzing these cases. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that, and also, you were talking about that case of the 500 kids, and I guess what I would note, William, is I I think that type of stuff still goes on in today's day and age. I really do. Maybe not to that level of, that many kids. And look, I know we had the whole satanic panic back in the late 80s and stuff like that. And as a result of that, people are like, oh, as a result of that, because people were falsely convicted, people just look at the whole subject and they say, well, the whole thing was a farce. None of it. And they just say none of it exists. It's all a bunch of crap.
Right.
And that is not true. Sure, some of the cases from back then probably weren't real. There was people who were falsely convicted and stuff like that, but that doesn't mean that the whole the whole realm of Satanism doesn't exist. It does. And you can go talk to any Catholic exorcist and they will tell you for certain that they have worked with people that have come to them who are involved in satanic cults, who are involved in sometimes multi-generational satanic cults, and who have experienced, unfathomable tortures, who have seen babies killed, kids molested. It's horrific. So those guys, the Catholic exorcists who are on the front lines of that, will be the first one to tell you that type of thing stuff exists. And there's various different levels of Satanism, by the way. The Church of Satan, founded by Anton LaVey, the Temple of Set, founded by Michael Cuneo, the Temple of Satan, in today's that stuff is what I would call public religious or atheistic Satanism. Those people don't actually believe that Satan exists as a real entity. I'm not sure about this Temple of Set, but for sure the Church of Satan, they did not believe that Satan was an actual entity. So I would say that level of Satanism is the least dangerous. There's several levels after that, and they get more dangerous, and horrible as you go on.
Right. It gets really dark. It gets super dark. I mean, really black. I mean, some aspects of the what was it? The one that was out in Nebraska. Those were, what do we know? Franklin scandal. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Super dark. Like they just taught, some people just say it was a sex trafficking thing, and that's not the case, right?
Oh no, there was definitely Satanism involved in that, and all your typical stuff of the kids being killed and kids being sexually abused and in just horrific ways. And it wasn't, and it was several people though who made those accusations that it all basically concurred with it. I forget the word, but there was several different people who made the same accusations. It wasn't just one person, corroborated. There's several people who all corroborated each other. So that is, so how would they know that? And those people didn't even know each other. Alicia Owen and Troy Bonner and
Bonacci.
Yep, Bonacci. Those guys did know each other, but those guys I don't think that knew the other victims. In the book she's called Eunice Moore, and I forget what Nick Bryant calls her, but there was other victims that corroborated the same exact thing, and they didn't even know each other.
Right.
So yes, that type of thing of politicians and high level people being involved in that stuff exists. It absolutely exists.
Right. Network traveling. It's almost like early Epstein, planes going to Chicago, DC. And I've talked to Tim Tate. He was the one who did Conspiracy of Silence, which never was shut down. Literally shut down from being shown. and became an underground internet. I don't even know if it's even still findable on YouTube anymore. But
it is. Well, I don't know about on YouTube, but you can go on. There's this app on Roku TV. It's it used to be called the Red Pill Network. You can find it on there.
Okay,
so I've watched
still
it.
around, never shown. Somebody got
Yeah.
paid off or something. That's a Red Pill Network. But yeah, I mean, you can see all those testimonies of Bonner and Bonacci telling their stories, and
Yep.
instead of those guys getting prosecuted, the ones who got prosecuted were the victims. Like, it's a complete inversion. It's almost like a satanic inversion of the legal system.
Exactly. That the principle of inversion is one of the clearest signs of demonic activity. When you see things being just completely inverted, turned inside out, upside down, that's one of the clearest signs of the diabolic at work.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, and that's unfortunately just one aspect of it.
Yep.
I mean, this other thing, Epstein, like Marquis de Sade, right?
Yep.
And so many like things tie into it. You mentioned Eyes Wide Shut, which is almost like a documentary in a strange way. It's so authentic, even though it's really fiction.
The profound thing about that movie, about Eyes Wide Shut, is the fact that so every year at in Mundelein, Illinois, at the seminary there in Mundelein, they have a conference on deliverance, healing, and exorcism. It's a conference for Catholic priests and also for Catholic lay people who work on exorcism teams, right? That's been going on since about 2004. So there's this priest in the book. I call him Father M. And the reason I don't give his name is because he's not actually publicly known as an exorcist, but this guy is probably, I would say, the leading expert, on exorcism and possession in the United States.
Wow.
He's been an exorcist for 30-40 years. He was an exorcist, like I said, back in the 90s and 80s and 70s, when there was just barely a handful of exorcists. He was an exorcist back then. He's one of these like original guys, and so he does a lot of teaching, right, about this subject, to bishops, to priests, and he talks at this Mundelein conference. And starting in, I think it was 2007, during his talk at the Mundelein conference, he kind of got into this topic a little bit and talked about perfect possession and high-level Satanism. And he told the audience, he said, I would recommend that you all go and watch the movie Eyes Wide Shut. And he said that type of stuff goes on. And again, they are the ones who would know. They're on the front lines of this stuff. The Catholic exorcists, and so he talked at the Mundelein conference for several years, 2008, 2009, and in all those years he kind of touched on it and mentioned the movie Eyes Wide Shut and said, yeah, that type of thing really does go on.
And it is with the elite, so it's a tie in. This behavior is an elite behavior, and the Eyes Wide Shut, it had all the heraldry in the background, right? So it's almost like they're showing the intergenerational aspect to the sect Ishtar abuse or whatever it is.
Yep. Yeah. Well, there was, in that movie, there's just a ton of, signs that you can see. And yeah, in the beginning of the movie, at the, Christmas party, you do see the star of Ishtar all over the place. And then there's more, during the ritual, when Tom Cruise's character, Dr. Hartford, is found out and he comes into the circle of people, you see the high priest dressed in red, and he's sitting on like a throne chair. And on that chair, at the top of it, you see a symbol of two eagles with a crown, right? And that symbol, the two eagles with a crown, is actually the symbol for the 33rd degree of Freemasonry. And so, yeah, there was just many different signs. And what I found absolutely fascinating and extraordinary is the fact that if you look at a picture of Epstein's temple, his temple thing that he had on his
Right, that
island.
blue and white one with
Yeah.
the gold top. Yeah.
It looks identical to that symbol, right? You got the two eagle things and the crown thing. Looks identical.
Wow. So from
I
one
don't
angle,
yeah. think that's a coincidence. I really don't.
Well, there's other stories. Like there were people. I think one of the people you mentioned in there was what was her name? Jufrey. She said in her autobiography that Ghislaine Maxwell had put black robes in her boudoir or in her closet and stuff like that. So that
I have no
there's
doubt.
no doubt they're doing all that crazy stuff. And it's part of the blackmail. It's part of the sealing. It's actually, that's what happens. So these guys are all, and it is incredible, these cover-ups and tie-in is also, you mentioned the whole Dutroux affair. Those were it's the same thing with Epstein and the Franklin cover-up, is that the elites are the ones who are the purveyors that never get busted. So the same thing happened in Belgium. It was all the old line families who had like heraldry and whatever, Duke of so-and-so that were really doing it. And Dutroux was just their, I mean, he's a horrible human being, but he was kind of their
he was a small cog in a big network.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
I guess I wanted to give my readers as many examples as I could of this type of thing, as many examples of this high level, pedophilia and Satanism as I could. And the, Dutroux affair from Belgium is one of the best. I mean, like you said, the Franklin scandal, Epstein, the Dutroux affair, and several, others that I cover. A lot of people don't remember the French banker, Dominique Strauss-Kahn, when he was busted in New York for assaulting a hotel maid, and then there was this big giant scandal. He was the former leader of the IMF. And then there was this big scandal, and he was busted in France for having these big orgies and all this stuff, So, and then you got the guy named Ronald Bernard, who was a Dutch banker. He worked, he was a high level Dutch banker. And he got out of it, and he started doing interviews about this type of thing that, when he got really high into the high level banking, that all of a sudden he started getting invited to these parties that turned into black masses. And then as he got farther and farther and farther, then all of a sudden he was asked to sacrifice children. And that's when he, that's when he quit. And I believe this guy, if you look at the original interview with him, when he starts talking about the children, he starts crying, like he starts losing it. I don't know if you've ever seen that interview with him, but it's profound. Profound.
Yeah, but it's really incredible. I mean, that there's so many going on. There was one in Portugal you mentioned.
Yep.
So some of these they're overlooked, or they're not known maybe as much in the U.S. And the U.K. is rife with all this. Jimmy Savile, it's actually the default. It's the default, Patrick. Believe it or not, like people get all freaked out. Like this is what's going on all over the place, which is really disturbing.
Absolutely, yeah. England is one of them. Yeah, that whole thing
really
was
bad. And I mean, they overlap. Savile and Epstein actually overlap. Like it's hard to believe, but Savile was good friends with the current king and Prince Andrew, and so was Epstein. Like there's pictures of Epstein at Prince Andrew's daughter's wedding with rapist Harvey Weinstein and Maxwell. So incredible stuff.
Yep, and it's funny you mentioned that, because I was just in my head, I was just going to mention that Hollywood is tied into it too.
Right.
Hollywood is tied into it too. Absolutely. So
we just had this whole thing with Jay-Z? No, it was Puff Daddy, right?
Right. Yep.
Doing the same kind of crazy stuff. Underage kids.
Yep.
Drugs, blackmail, like a lot of blackmail involved in all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Puff Daddy was just a small part of what's going on all over Hollywood, honestly. I think it's the same thing. They bring you in, and then there's some kind of weird after party.
Yep.
After the regular party, and that's where things get dark. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I guess I just wanted to by writing the book, I just wanted to tell people, hey, this stuff is real. It's going on. You need to know about it. And a lot of people don't want to know about this, to be honest with you. They don't want to believe that, some of their politicians may be involved. They don't want to think about it. But it's not going to just go away if you put your head in the sand. And
it's here now. It's everywhere. You can explain a lot of the corruption in the DC. You talk about Spence, right? Who was a blackmailer and then ended up dead in a hotel room.
Greg Spence.
Greg Spence, yeah. So
I
mean, it's like the beast system or the Harlem, it's like something really dark that's infected global politics, really, on the West. It's unreal. But I mean, it is interesting because we have right now, true crime is the number one genre, at least in podcasts. People are crazy for true crime, and serial killers are almost kind of like dark superheroes. People want to know everything. The most number one show on Netflix's history was about Jeffrey Dahmer. These guys are perfectly possessed. At least some of them are. After reading your book, I'm totally convinced. But can you kind of go through your research into that? Because those are other things that are overlooked, right?
Totally. So yes, I don't think all of them are, but I think a lot of them are. And the reason that I think that is because they display, apart from, viciously murdering people, I mean, they display many different signs, of a demonic presence in their life. So probably one of the best examples and clearest examples is Ted Bundy, for sure. Because he just displayed many, 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 many different signs from a very early age of some kind of demonic presence, working in his life. There were several people several different people who said that at certain points when they would be around Ted, that all of a sudden his whole entire demeanor and personality would change, and there would just be like the air got sucked out of the room or something, and all of a sudden there would be this horrific foul smell that started emanating from his body, and it terrified people. That happened several times. He would go into trances and stuff like that. Then you have the people who interviewed him in the prison, who said that literally when he would start talking about the murders, that his eyes and he, if you look at a regular picture of him, he had blue eyes, but when he would start talking about these murders, his eyes would literally turn black. So you have that. You have the fact that several other of the interviewers, after interviewing him, they would say that after they got out of the prison, that they would literally they'd be literally sick, like physically sick. So there's, that's one example. And obviously he killed, we know about 36 women. Right. That's probably much more. That number's probably higher. But you also have some of the survivors from him. Some of those stories are absolutely fascinating. There's one, a story about a lady who had an encounter with him, and she saw something like in his face or in his eyes that just absolutely just terrified her. And she couldn't even talk about it for years after that. She just saw something, that just some primal, thing inside of her just said danger, danger, danger. And I think she said it was in his eyes too that she saw it. So yeah, there's that. So then, yes, you also have Jeffrey Dahmer. So Ted Bundy wasn't, from what I could, research, I don't think he was involved in Satanism. But Jeffrey Dahmer, he's a different story. Jeffrey Dahmer definitely was involved in Satanism from an early age, actually. And so, yeah, I mean, when he was in high school, he would dabble in the occult, do seances, try to conjure Lucifer. He did all kinds of things. And then an adult, he started murdering people, eating people, and his final goal really was to murder enough people so that he could set up a satanic altar in his apartment with the bones and skulls of the people that he murdered. So, and there's another person who displayed several signs of possession. So,
like not trying to call a Catholic priest and try to get unpossessed. Like, just that was his life. And I mean, these guys could lie to the police. Dahmer and Bundy were like you said, this weird changeling thing where like they could just be calm as anything after cutting a body up and putting him in the back of their car.
Yep.
That's also a really scary aspect
of it is. And not only that too, but the fact that, like you said, being able to just completely manipulate the police and stuff, because the demonic is a superior intelligence, right? So if they're in control of somebody, they have the ability to do that type of thing. So yeah, I mean, there were several incidences of, Dahmer, I think, got pulled over with a dead body in his back seat.
Yeah. I mean, talked his way out of it.
Right.
He talked his way out of that little Thai kid too.
Yes. Right. Who was naked and bleeding from his anus, literally. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It's
crazy. And, people say, I think the judge said that Ted Bundy, he said he would be proud to have him practice in his court.
Yeah.
Like, wow, this guy is a monster, like a literal demon possessed, insatiable killer, like crazy. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, those are a lot of those serial killers do have, I would say it's almost the default that they're either possessed. I didn't know about BTK and his demon.
Oh, yeah.
But I do remember the guy from Florida who like killed a bunch of co-eds. He literally was in contact with an entity he called Gemini. So he's literally in contact with demons. Yeah.
Yep. I think I know who you're talking about, and I probably should have put that one in the book. And I couldn't. At some point, I had to cut it short at 400 some pages. Like I couldn't,
It's a really I do a lot of research. It's very, very well researched. I got to give you credit for it. That could be your next book. Is the demon? I bet you could make a lot of money on a book about the demon possessed serial killers, because it's like almost the default. You can just put a call out to people listening to my show. Send Patrick R. Bell all your stories of people who are serial killers who are into Satanism or killed. I mean, you have Gecht, right? You've got the Ripper,
Robin Gecht, the Chicago Rippers.
So many, yeah. I mean, I would say all of them, and I mean, wow, yeah. It's really dangerous out there, and like you say, there's people out there still doing it. I think you're right. I think that
it is a dangerous world out there. It is a dangerous world out there, William, and you know that better than anyone. I mean, you research the smiley face killers, and
you cover Aleister Crowley. I covered Aleister Crowley. That's a perfect possessed person.
Oh, yeah.
That guy wanted to be possessed.
Yeah, he did, and that's essentially that's what I mean. That is the definition of perfect possession. It's a person that essentially wants to be possessed. They want it. They don't fight against it. They want, for whatever reason. It may seem just ludicrous to you and I, but for some people, they just fall absolutely headlong into a 100-foot deep pool of evil, and they just jump into it and just roll around in it, and they love it for whatever reason. It seems sick to you and I, but to some people, that's what they want, and that's what they choose. I mean,
have you ever heard like Damien Eccles talk about his possession? Damien Eccles of the West Memphis 3?
Yeah. So no, that is actually a case that I have not studied a whole lot. I mean, I read a little bit about it, some about it, but I didn't go real deep into that one.
You can check out my book, Abomination. It has it, but he talks about being possessed by a woman, but he wants to be possessed. He thinks that this possession gives him power.
Yep.
So it's part of a power thing.
100%.
And there was a thing you write about Hitler too.
Yep.
But there's also there's a story of Hitler telling Mussolini that he was possessed with like some old entity, and it freaked out Mussolini. He was like a high-end, high-end occultist too, or something. I mean, it goes on and on and on.
Yeah. I have no doubt about that. Hitler 100% was perfectly possessed. I mean, that there is so many indications in his life from a very early age. The stories that August Kubasek relates of Hitler.
Right.
Just, there is a lot of evidence. And I wanted to also make it clear in my book that I was not saying that the devil made them do it. That is absolutely not. I try to make it very clear that these are cases of not the devil made me do it, but rather cases of demonic human collaboration, right? It's people who want to be possessed, who want to kill people, who want to do evil. And yes, they are possessed, but they have entered into a collaborative relationship with a demon or some kind of devil or Satan himself. They've entered into this relationship to basically to do evil, to corrupt as many people as they can, to bring as much evil into the world as they can. And that's how evil largely is introduced into the world. That's how demonic ideologies, demonic doctrines, demonic
Right.
whatever, that's how they're introduced into the world, through people who are servants of the devil. And they're out there.
There's no doubt. And I think that a lot of this culture change is influenced by Luciferians. Like this is all loose, like this whole
I don't
breakdown of
doubt
the
that.
church and the
Yep.
pride flag and 85 million genders. These are all occult. They can be founded in the occult. I mean, they all
Yep.
trace back to that, which is really scary. Yeah, so there's a lot more in this book you cover. I mean, Kubasek knew Hitler first, so that's like a first person account
Yep.
of a guy who literally lived with Hitler. So
Yep.
you kind of see that. He also said that Hitler was kinked out, like he was into kind of kinky sex, and that's a whole nother. I can send you a book. You mentioned it's called Hidden Hitler. Check that out if you get a copy of Hidden Hitler, because they're like the people in the West or the what is it? The Langer, I think it's called the Langer Report, which became the Mind of Adolf Hitler. But they're like, we're thinking this guy could be a homosexual, and the guy in the Hidden Hitler's like, Hitler's obviously a homosexual. I'll show you why.
Yeah.
So but it's from a German side, so he knew all of it would be knowing the kind of cruising haunts where Hitler would go to, right? So he knew like, hey, you're going to this hotel. This is where gay people go.
Yep.
It's like a LGBT place. So anyway,
Well,
Hidden Hitler. That's for the audience too. Check out Hidden Hitler.
In the book, I mentioned that there was an intelligence report that said that Hitler was that one of his kinks was coprophilia, which obviously is having sex with feces or involving that. And so in my book, I list like 17 different signs and symptoms of perfect possession, and engaging in sexual depravities is one thing that you find almost universally in people who I believe that were perfectly possessed, like literally universally among them, William. They in some way engage in some kind of sexual depravity, whether it's pedophilia, bestiality, necrophilia, you name it, some type of sexual depravity. So that's one of the main signs of it.
Hitler was, I mean, if you look at the testimony of Gelly Raubel, who was Hitler's niece, who suspiciously died by a gunshot wound to the chest, which is very unfeminine, by the way. Women almost never have gun crimes. There's you can count on one hand a woman with a gun killing people. But she said Hitler was totally kinked out. Like he was like,
yep.
Yeah. So it's just another sign. Like he had all the markers. He probably had all 17 markers. Like, just a mess. Yeah.
Well, that's another one of the signs, actually, is people who are perfectly possessed. You'll find that people close to them, they start dying in horrible ways. They end up in insane asylums. They experience just multiple different types of ruinous destruction. That's one of the people who are perfectly possessed basically leave just a trail of evil, suffering, destruction in their wake. That's basically
makes sense.
Yeah,
that's Crowley to a T, right?
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, all of his women died or suicide or mental institution. Like he bragged about it, actually. So
addicted to drugs. That's
just wreckage. Yeah, great book. I mean, really interesting. But I got a question for you. Somebody,
Sure,
Brian, in the chat asked this, and
sure.
I think it's an interesting question. Why are the cures, the exorcisms only kind of, why do the Catholics emphasize, or are they the ones doing it, while maybe it's not as many Protestants or other non-Catholic, or even, I don't know so much about Orthodoxy. But why do you think it's a kind of a Catholic tradition of why there is a Catholic tradition of exorcism?
Well, because I think there's been a tradition of it going all the way back, 2,000 years. I mean, I don't want to get into a debate on which church is this and which church is that, but I mean, historically, I mean, really, the Catholic Church, it has been around for 2,000 years, and it's been, they've had a tradition of exorcism for literally for that long. Not only that, but I think that because of the apostolic succession, because of the sacraments, because of ordination, because of the fact that Catholic bishops can literally trace themselves back in an unbroken line all the way back to one of the original apostles, because all of that, I think that people go and seek out Catholic exorcists because the exorcisms are effective. As long as you are willing to change your life and do the work and you really want help, that's the main thing. If you really want to get out of the mess you have got into with a demon, then a Catholic priest who does exorcisms, it will be effective. I mean, it can take a long time depending on multiple different factors, the severity of the case, the type of demon involved, what was all done, the door that was opened, how long, that all that stuff. But I think that really that's why, because the Catholic Church has been around for a long time, and they have the knowledge. I mean, if you look at some of the original books on demonology written in the early 1500s were written by Catholic priests. Father Peter Therese is one of the best examples. I mean, they had Jesuit priest from like the 1500s. He wrote a book called Hoc Est Demoniaci, and also he wrote one called Loca Infesta. Those were just huge, tomes on the topic of demonology, magic, witchcraft, exorcism, possession, all that stuff. I mean, it's written in Latin, unfortunately. And so, you can't just go read it. But yeah, I mean, I think that's why.
It makes sense. And for people who may not be from a Christian background, it's in the New Testament. I mean, tons of, I mean, releasing the man for the pigs who said they were
Yep.
legion, right? And
Mhm.
other things like that. And just the apostles as well.
Right.
And I think you even mentioned like the contest between Peter and Simon Magus. So these
Yep.
kind of
Yep.
magician type people were around 2,000 years, and they're around today. I would put
Oh yeah.
Crowley right in that line of a Simon Magus type.
Oh yeah, I mean, back in Jesus's time, holy man, yeah, the occult was huge. I
Yeah.
mean, geez, did the city of Ephesus? I mean, good heavens! I mean, there was multiple temples there to pagan gods, and you had I mean, yeah, temple prostitutes, and you had all kinds of stuff going on back then.
Yeah.
Sacrifices to Baal and Moloch, and just yeah,
Right.
in
No,
the
it's
same,
part of the Old Testament too. Yeah.
yeah,
Old and new. I mean, it's
100%.
really is part of that early foundational documents and the Gospels and things like that. But Patrick, we are at the 50-minute mark. Is there anything you'd like to add or anything I missed? Anybody have any questions? You can type them into the chat on Rumble if you're on Rumble. That's really the best place to do it. I'm
Yeah.
permanently off YouTube. I'm no longer going to deal with those bums. But anyway, anything you'd like to add or anything I missed, Patrick?
Not really. I just, would urge everyone to read the book. I mean, it is a heavy topic, and it is probably a heavy read for some people. It's maybe a little heavy on the theological side, but there are things in that book that you need to know. There are, after you read the book, a lot of stuff is going to make sense, I guess is what I would say. this is a totally unique book. There's never been a whole book written on perfect possession before, ever. Like I say in the book, there's only little tiny tidbits of information on it, spanning hundreds of years, spanning hundreds of different books. And I tried to put it all together into one source material. And so, yeah, it's an important topic, because you then, after reading it, you'll have a better understanding of the world and why things happen in the world the way they do, and what's really going on out there.
Right. And this is out there. This is real stuff. These people want to be possessed. That's what's really scary, is like, it's hard for people to believe in kind of the scientific modern age, but
Yep.
I mean, Damien Eccles is just, or Crowley, really perfect examples of people coveting demon possession or entity possession or whatever you call it. But
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
You were right that part of it is a lust for power. That is a big part of it. Big part of it. The power is intoxicating, right? To some people, it's intoxicating, and people will give everything to get it. Everything, to the tune of their eternal soul, literally.
You're right. It's the Faustian bargain, right? It goes all the way. It goes back to that. And where's the best place for people to get Slaves of Satan?
Well, they can get it pretty much anywhere that books are sold. Amazon, Barnes and Noble. They can get it on Trine Day, Trine Day's website, my publisher. So yeah, anywhere. It's everywhere online.
And then if people have any follow-up questions or anything like that, where's the best place to reach out to you?
I would say they could probably email me, sanctepat, so SANCTEPAT @yahoo.com. If they have any questions, they can just.
And I will put a link to that email in there for people if they have any follow-up. But this is going to go up today, August 29th, 2024. And again, title of the book is Slaves of Satan, a Catholic Study of Perfect Possession, Diabolical Subjugation, and the Enemies of Jesus Christ. And the author again is Patrick R. Bell, Bell, and just published May 2024. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, William, for having me on. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.
You as well. Stay there. Stay there.